Wendy Wilkinson, welcome to the podcast. We are here, the next chapter in schools. I'm your host, as always, Peter Young with Corvessa Partners. Wendy is the co-president of School First Education Consulting. She's based here in the Washington, D.C. area. Wendy, welcome. If you don't mind, just give everybody a chance to learn a little bit more about you, anything that you'd like to share about yourself, your background, the current work you do, and then we'll go from there.
Great. Thank you so much for having me here. Really fun. Right. I am co-president. I joined School First 4 years ago. I was about to say 4 seasons because that's how our brain works in missions world. Linda Talton is our founding president. And a couple of years after the pandemic, I was thinking, okay, I've been in education for over 30 years in independent schools. Much of that was in California, in the Bay Area, and the last 15 have been here in Washington, D.C. And I thought, I'm ready to do something different. How do I use all of my expertise of being a director of enrollment at several schools, middle school head, school counselor, mom of 2 kids with very different learning styles? What's next for me? And so I talked to Linda and we jumped into building a company, an education firm. And I love it because all of those experiences I now get to combine and use every day with individual families. So basically, School First, most of what our work is helping families find the right school for each child, knowing that there are fantastic school options, public, private, charter, Catholic, etc. We know that each kid is different. And even though, heck, I only had 2 kids, so anybody with more than 2 kids, you want them to stay in one school, one community, one calendar, etc. I pretty early on in my children's upbringing realized that's not going to work for our family. So finding the right fit so they could thrive. We absolutely at School First believe there's no such thing as the best school. There's the best school for each child. End of story. So since I started at School First 4 years ago, we've grown from 2 to 9 consultants, which is super fun. We help families find the right school for their kid, starting in preschool all the way through college. Everyone has their own unique specialty and focus and region. So we have people in the Bay Area, DC, New York, and beyond. And we have 3 college consultants. And we also, one extra piece is that we work with schools in finding the best faculty and administration as well, because all of us, our number one priority, the only way you join School First is you worked in these schools. You know what happens behind that magic curtain. You've seen it for yourself. So that's who we are.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Wendy. Thank you. So if we just dive in here, sort of thinking about schools, and as we know, you and I are both here in the DC area, the competition is ripe. There are lots of independent schools, lots of different types of independent schools, like you said, based on the student profile. So in the work that you do with schools, I guess my first question is, how do you see schools thinking beyond sort of this idea of open houses, and what are they doing either creatively or not, for that matter, to attract students and families to want to go there?
You know, what I've seen over the last 10 years with the pandemic in the middle is open houses changing a bit and getting more personal, because I think everybody's realizing the match is so critical. A great way for families to begin getting to know the schools before even going on a tour is on their websites. You'll notice there's a lot more videos. There's a lot more interviews of kids and families' experiences. So it is more personalized. I want my families to watch those videos and say, does this feel like us? Does this seem like something that, am I hearing what I need to hear that our family will really connect with? And then you go on a tour and or an open house. An open house is a really great way to go get a sense of the general community and all the major, huge, beautiful programs most private schools have the opportunity to offer families. I always recommend to my families the personalized tour, the small group tour or individual tours can't be beat, because they're during the school day. You do have to miss work. Your kid, if they're old enough, has to miss school, but for an hour tour, it's so worth it because you're seeing the kids in the classroom and the teachers interacting with the kids. You can go on a Saturday or Sunday, but you're not seeing what it is day to day. And then you can do both, but the priority is definitely going to be that tour.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Curious to know more, as you've spoken to families over the years, like you said, you've recommended go see the videos on the website, go maybe to an open house. But what are families sharing with you? So let's say they follow that advice, they go, they have a small group tour, but in general, what are they saying in terms of their overall experiences? Obviously, not to mention specific schools, but in general, where are families finding either more authentic sort of experiences at these schools, more enjoyable experiences as they get to know schools? Just curious to know, again, since you and I are both here in the DC area.
Yeah, I hear the most favorite experiences are when their kids are being interactive. So some schools offer mini classes, for instance. We used to do that at my previous school, and I loved them. They're a lot of work for the school and the teachers because you're teaching kids you don't know. But mini classes allows the adults and the children to get a sense of what it's like to go here without any
Mm.
pressure, right? Because assessment day, when they come in to take an assessment to see if they're ready academically for that school, feels a little bit more pressurized, a little more
Right.
intense, right? And so this is a way to go and be like, I don't even know if I'm applying, but I want to be a part of this to get a sense of it. The open houses where people just wander around and it's up to them to ask questions to the adults standing around seem to be the least appealing. You get a sense of the space and you can talk real in deep curriculum if you have those questions for specific teachers, but you don't get that, I know what it feels like to go here. So I think the interactive engagement with the actual students, super helpful. There are some specialized open houses. One school just did an athletic open house that a bunch of my clients went to and loved it because it was like a spirit event, right? Prior to a basketball game that they could stay and watch. The entire school was there and there was just a lot of fun and spirit involved.
Yeah.
And so my clients were like, I got 2 texts that night saying, it's now my favorite school. So there's lots of opportunity to go to things that you really love. Now, if you're into theater and you're not an athlete, that's not going to be the one that hits home.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, it's funny you mentioned that. As an alum of that school and somebody who was there Friday night with their family watching the basketball games, I noticed that too and realized what a departure from when I was at that school as a student. And again, not to say this is bad or good, but just to see the transition that this and I would say other schools are making in the direction of athletics and trying to recruit amazing kids, not just through the lens of athletics, but just well-rounded kids who are strong academically, who also potentially bring sort of an athletic component to their student profile. It's great to hear that that was so well received because you're right, there was a ton of buzz that evening at the event and just yeah, and the games were pretty cool too. I just want to go backwards a bit in terms of school first and the families that you're working with. Are they all local? Are they looking for, I'm curious to know in your experience, do people start the process with, okay, these are the 4 schools we're going to go to, and inevitably it never ends up being those 4 schools? And curious also to know, since COVID, my sense is that admissions applications to independent schools, sort of like at the university level, have gone up. What's your experience with that, and how are you helping families navigate potentially pre and post COVID sort of realities of the application world?
There's a bunch of questions in that question.
Yeah, no, and answer them
So
however you want to.
if I skip over a couple,
no, yes, no, please do skip over.
We can return to any of them. I might have a little bit of that ADHD brain.
For sure.
Wait, what?
Yep.
Okay. Post applications definitely during COVID and post COVID increased at most schools. I believe they're leveling off, particularly here in the DMV, because as you could imagine, and I don't know who's going to be watching this if they're all over the country, DMV was hit extremely hard with the changes in the administration. And as you can imagine, here in our area, a lot of people work for the government. And so if they lost their jobs, they're not many of them. The schools did a great job doing what they could do to help their current families not have to change schools if their financial situation changed. But it's making people stop and really think about, what are we going to do with our kids? Are we able to keep up with the tuitions? Which is a very big question because these tuitions are not small. Schools do a great job regarding financial aid. So please, please, please consider it. If you have, not you personally, but families have change in income, do not hesitate going to your school and asking to apply for financial aid. Or if you just don't know if you qualify, it's worth it. You just never know. Do we only work with DMV? I spend most of my time with kids here when we say DMV, it's not the driving a motor vehicle agency that I always thought of until I moved here 15 years ago. DC, Maryland, and Virginia. Though that's most of my families because I have worked in 2 schools here and I know the schools very, very well. I was part of the Association of Independent Schools of Greater Washington. All the directors of admission in these schools joined this group. And so I know them. They're my colleagues. I love being the expert of schools and have relationships so I can help find that match. With that said, I know a variety of schools in different regions in Seattle, where San Diego, where I went to college, and Los Angeles and the Bay Area. And we have consultants in each of these regions, as well as, of course, our founding presidents in New York. And then internationally, I have visited many international and American schools. And the reason I do that is because oftentimes those families are moving back to the States and they're looking to say, okay, we discovered this. We love this school, our international school in Vienna. We want a school like that. And now that I've been there, I know exactly what that school looks like. I have a better understanding of what that means and what those grades look like. And so when they come back, I can say, let's look at these schools for your kid.
Right.
Same, more and more families in the US are saying, we don't have to stay in the United States. Our kid could go to boarding school, or we could move to a different country.
Right.
And so we are, and because we're in the US, most of us only speak English. So I know the American schools and international schools, which yes, the main language is English at those schools too. So we help kids go in and out of the country as well. I think I missed one or two of your questions.
Oh, the only other one was, in your experience as parents enter into this process with you and Education First, inevitably they have a list, right, of certain schools. I'm just curious to know, you can put a percentage on it or not, but in general, they start with a list. How often do they end up at maybe one of those schools on the list, or do you see them, because of the work that you all are doing, choosing a different school because of sort of exposure and awareness that maybe they weren't aware of a certain school or schools prior to starting this process?
Thank you. That was such a key question. And I missed it. It totally varies what they come to me with. Some families, many of my families, never considered private school before, but for whatever reason, a new learning discovery of how their child learns, or the child just wants something more, or they're new to this country and they have no idea what the schools are. But yes, especially because I worked at two schools that are often named as schools that people go to, or those are the best schools. People may come to me and say, oh, good, they're going to help me. School First can help me get in. No, we can't. And we don't, because that's not our job. Our job is, who's your child? Who's your family? Let me tell you why I believe these 4 schools or 5 schools may be even a better fit. Do I tell people they can't apply to a school? Families come with really thoughtful reasons why they want to look at a school. I just may expand their list, or we may discover more in this process that the parents, when you're a parent that's not an educator, you have probably siblings and some of your friends' kids to compare your kid to, and that's all. So you don't know how they learn. You don't know where their strengths are. It's impossible to tell. I was an educator and I still didn't know, right? And so sometimes we just take a break and look at this child and really talk, who is this kid, and where will they just go fly? That's all I want for these kids. I want them to just have fun learning, be challenged, of course, but thrive, because then they can do anything in their life. And sometimes there's a little massaging when they come with a very clear list, because DC Urban Mom says that these are the top tier schools.
The big
there's no
three,
such thing as a top tier, the big three, big 4.
Come on, Wendy, the big 3, that's right.
But again, that's never looking at the individual kid.
Right. Never. No.
And
never.
And don't get me wrong, these schools are fantastic, but for every kid, heck no. For very few kids. For very few kids. And those aren't kids that are better by any means. They're just kids that learn a certain way. And they thrive with this kind of community and this kind of education. And other kids will thrive just as equally in another community.
Right. Most of the conversations, Wendy, I've had on this podcast are with independent school leaders. And so I would say that's the primary audience. Here's my question for you. If other school leaders watch this episode, what would you say to them in terms of do more of this, do less of this, in terms of appealing to families? And again, like you said, I think this is a good point. The school's job is not to appeal to every kid and every family, because that's not realistic. But what have you seen certain schools that are doing well, and or other schools or maybe conversely the same school things not so well? So again, to ask the question, what would you say to school leaders to do more of and or less of?
I think because I'm friends with so many school leaders and we talk about this all the time, people are super aware that our kids are struggling all over, public, private, this generation. There's a lot going on in our world that these kids are having to process and deal with. So how to know and be super clear of what your school does well and with who, and be okay with saying we're not good enough for that kid. And probably won't say it in those terms, but I used to have to say no to families, and they would call me and say, what does my kid need to do better to get in? And I'd say, oh, no. This, how your child learns. And I would walk them through how your child learns. We don't know how to teach to that well. And I don't want them to have to come in here and try to force themselves to be a different kind of learner. We teach really well at this, but we don't necessarily teach in this way. But let me tell you about the 4 schools that do. And that's where your child will do well. So it's not that any school's better, it's they do really well with this. So I would say to the leaders, be really clear on what do you do really well and what are your boundaries? Who do you not serve very well? And be okay with that.
Right.
And make
Right.
sure the families, well, you can't, the school leaders are not responsible for making sure the families know there are other places, but there are. I have a list
Sure.
of schools that I send kids to. It's well over 35 schools that people, and these are independent schools that will, including some Catholic schools, but there's so many more, there's so many options that I keep adding to it every year. I don't add to it unless I know it and I spend time on campus because I really want to make sure I'm enough of an expert to send families
Right.
that way. But there's so many options that I just really hope that schools continue to communicate who they are.
Right.
And that's all they can do, right?
Yeah.
That's all they can do.
Yeah. Let me ask you I don't know if it's the opposite question, but so now for families, right? Families navigating this process, whether it's entering kindergarten, I have a son who's in 7th grade, like I said, at a local K-8 school who, we're going to navigate his high school application process, less than a year from now. So in your experience, what should families do more of and or less of in terms of how they go about navigating experience? My sense is a lot of families that we speak to overanalyze situations, get in their own head, if that makes sense. Of course, there's a parent interview. So again, what's your advice to, let's say, a family or parents watching this episode? Dear family, as you navigate the independent school world here in the DMV, do more of this, do less of this.
I would start early, not necessarily with your child. So if you have a 7th grader this spring, I, as a parent, would spend time exploring and researching schools. Some give spring tours. More and more schools are offering spring tours.
Okay, yeah, okay.
I tend to like my clients that are in 7th grade to enjoy 7th grade and not get too wound up about this. But the reason I ask parents to start earlier is so they can not pressure everything into the fall of 8th grade.
Right. Yeah, it's a short
These
time
are
frame.
important.
Right?
It's a short time frame, and these kids are in sensitive times of their life developmentally. And so the less intense we can make it, the more enjoyable it can be. So if the parents have a little bit of understanding of where they want to direct the search, while you're doing that, really think about who your child is. Read over the report cards. Think about their learning style. Sometimes you just want to follow an older sibling. Yes, maybe. Are they different learners? What else should we be thinking about? Think broadly at first, and then you can bring down the list. And as you start going in the fall with your son, in your case, really listen to them. In 8th grade at first, almost to a kid, I'm going to these 3 schools. Usually the parents think the same thing, but they're thinking like the 3 top tier or whatever.
Right. Yeah, sure.
And the kids are like, where are my friends going? Because that's
Always
so developmentally appropriate. It's so right on. And it's so scary to leave, particularly at K-8, if they've been there the whole time. They can't wait to get out of there, and they're so scared to get out of there. Right. So allow them the space to say, I'm only going to the school with my friends. Okay, let's just go check this out. Almost to the 8th grader. And I used to do outplacement for 8th graders at a K-8. Almost to an 8th grader by December, they're like, they learned so much about themselves. And the parents, if they can take a deep breath and really listen to their kid, which is hard because sometimes they are illogical at this age, but really try to pay attention, they stop wanting to go where their kids go and they start learning more about who they are and what they want. And that is a really cool process. So as much as 8th grade sounds scary because of this process, it actually is a fabulous opportunity for the parents and the child to figure out, who are they? What do they want? What are their strengths? Where can we lean into that? And where will the school adore this kid? Like, be so excited to have this kid. Right. That's
Absolutely.
what I want my kid to be like. Awesome. We can't wait to have you here. Not please get them in. Oh, go.
Yeah, exactly.
We want them to enjoy it. So I think start early. Also, once you start applying, you will be invited to 10 events at least at every single school. I bow down to the administrators for hosting all of those events while they're doing what it takes to run a school. You don't have to go to all of them. They are for you to get a breadth of understanding of the school. Go to the required moments, definitely a tour when campus is on, and then the ones that genuinely are interesting or you're curious about. So if you're an athlete, of course you go to the athletic open house. If you're not, go to a play.
Right.
You know, there's different events that you could attend that help you get a better sense of the community. Oftentimes, the admissions people aren't at all of these events, so it's not like we're taking notes and we're saying, "Oh, good, they were here. We like them better." That's not what's happening. They are trying to share their community so that you also are picking the right fit.
Right.
So it's not, I'm going to be at the most events and I win.
Right. But I agree with you. I think parents probably think that, though, to a certain extent.
Of course. And most, if you're in the DMV, most likely that most families are double income families in order to do this. And so we're busy. People are busy. So prioritize, because your child needs to see you calm. Your child needs to have dinner with you still.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah.
So the more you can kind of take a deep breath and really enjoy this process, dare I say that, the better.
Yeah. Good. No, Wendy, I appreciate that. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. To close, I just want to give you the opportunity to share again anything else, either about yourself individually, about Education First. How can folks get in touch with you? And then I will thank you for your time and wish you well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, we are at www. I can't believe I'm saying that on an ad. School First NYC, because our founders started it in New York, .com. Schoolfirstnyc.com. That is a little bit of a misnomer. We definitely have 2 experts in New York, but we can serve families all over the country. And all 9 of us believe we're all educators. We've been doing this, the minimum I think is 10 years of each of our consultants. And we care deeply about kids thriving in school and enjoying it. So you can book a free 30-minute consultation with any of us in any region on our website.
Right. Great. Well, thank you again, Wendy Wilkinson, for your time. I am Peter Young, your host here at the Next Chapter in Schools. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.